Morning, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Central Otago District Council Hearings Panel. Just got a few formalities to go through before we move to the first agenda item. So the first item is the apologies, and there are none because all the panel is here. And the second item is to confirm the minutes of the meeting held 21st January 2025, item 25.6.1. Someone like to move that they be confirmed, please? Tracy, seconded. Ian. All in favour? Aye. Carried. Thank you. Okay, so now we can move on to agenda item 25.6.2, which is resource consent 250134. And the formal part of that is this is a properly convened meeting of the hearings panel call for the purpose of hearing a resource application for a subdivision consent to realign the boundary between two allotments at 141 and 157 Lower Mannaburn Dam Road, Galloway. I've asked the Minute Secretary to report on proceedings to date.
All statutory requirements under Section 95 of the Resource Management Act have been complied with. The Section 42A report prepared by the Planning Officer has been circulated to address for service.
And the following procedure will be followed for the hearing. The panel may ask questions. Council's officers, consultants will direct any questions, points of clarification through the chair, and the chair shall be deemed to be the person asking the question. The applicant or the applicant's representative will be invited to make submissions and present evidence. The Section 42A report writer will be invited to provide a right of reply following the hearing of the evidence and submissions, and the applicant then has the right of reply but shall not be permitted to again traverse the evidence or raise new evidence. Before proceeding with the hearing, I'd ask that all parties appearing identify themselves. I'll introduce the panel first. Their names in front of us, but Neil Gillespie, I'm the chair of the hearings panel. Tracy Patterson, Martin McPherson, and Ian Cooney to my left. Karen looks after the administration of things, and Rogers provides any technical advice and keeps the panel in line. And of course, Adam Vincent is the Section 42A report writer. Mr. Clouston, over to you and your clients.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For those I haven't met, my name is Peter Clouston. I work as a planning consultant for the Rural Survey. On my left is Darcy Prendergast. And the lead gentleman over the buyer and seller of the piece of land.
Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you. Process is quite formal, but we don't try and be dicks about it unless we have to. So don't be too worried about the procedure I've got to follow. Got this run sheet so I can get through that. Right, thank you for that. Someone like to move the Section 42A report be prepared by the planning officer be taken as read. Martin, seconded. Tracy, all in favour? Aye. Carried. Mr. Clouston, in your capable hands, sir.
Thank you. So what we have in front of us is a boundary adjustment whereby basically one landowner sells an adjoining piece of property to be a fixed land now. In the district plan, this is listed as a control activity. Planning staff have been interpreted to be a non-complying activity, and hence we're here at a hearing. So, their internal machinations aside, the effects of the boundary adjustment on the ground will be a new fence. There's nothing else that will change. The positive aspects of this particular application is part of this Central Otago District Council road and network includes about runs into the respective properties, and through the boundary adjustment that will transfer to the council the boundaries at zero cost. So this corrects a legal anomaly which has occurred in the course of history, and that will be rectified as a result of this application. And there's nothing good I can mention. So I really reiterate the effects on the ground. No tangible change will be seen apart from the fence line.
That's pretty much, I think, how we read it as well. Your comment about the planning rules around what's a boundary adjustment and what's not is yes, your view is a view. It's not the right view, which is why we're here. I'm sure as the plan is reviewed, that anomaly will be dealt to in one way, shape or form. So there's some certainty about it, because I'm not going to say I disagree with the position that you've taken, but others have as well, and council needs to be consistent. So that's why we're here with that. I've got no particular questions, but I know that Councillor Patterson does. Probably a good place to raise it.
Yes, probably whether it's for Adam or.
I think started here and it'll end up there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I guess the big thing that, when I was looking at the plan, and I reiterate what Neil said as well, is in relation to the access for the property. And just wanted to maybe get your, I mean, you've obviously got some thoughts in relation to, council staff and the possibility that easement was not going to be granted for access and potentially a new realignment for access. And that was, I just don't know whether you want to have any comment in relation to that.
No, it's a slightly awkward situation whereby the access is over a piece of council reserve land. And that situation has endured since that house was constructed without any noticeable ill effect. So the question is, can it be legalised in its current position, or is it necessary to relocate? And it comes down to the status of that plan over which the alignment is now. Is it actually a reserve under the Reserves Act as gazetted and signed off by the minister? Is it a piece of council freehold land being used for a reserve? And that point of difference is quite relevant. So in one situation, council can grant a right to occupy or a license to occupy without, that's in the council freehold land situation, without so further penalty. If it's a reserve under the Reserves Act as gazetted, that process will track it and so we could say which is in this part of the bill. And is the status quo acceptable to the council?
Okay. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I think maybe picking it up is that from a consenting point of view, it would be probably wrong of us as a panel not to ignore the situation regarding the access. But equally, we've got to be careful that a condition doesn't come through that isn't workable or isn't going to happen. Because we can't be sure whether the council or under the Reserves Act an easement right away will be granted or not. And if we were to require it as part of the consent, and then it couldn't happen, then the applicant's left with a situation that's not tenable. So I think what we'll need to look at is saying, well, how can we make sure that the issue is addressed so that it's actually fixed going forward, one way, shape or form? Because it would be irresponsible, this panel, to leave it hanging in the balance. Current owner, fine. Future owner, someone comes back and picks it up and it just never goes away. So I think that we'll probably look for Adam for some thoughts about the status of the land and about how we can probably look at whether we can put an appropriate condition in place that says, well, if assuming we grant it, that covers that situation, because it needs to be fixed one way or the other, certainly for everybody.
Yeah, that is, I think, part of the decision-making process.
Yeah.
That does need to be quite thorough.
Yeah.
And if, you know, and it's just a council's decision, the determination that there needs to be relocated directly off the road reserve rather than over a piece of reserve land, as it is known. Also need to
Yeah.
need to see the cost implications.
Yeah.
So there is, I think there's an issue with comfortable your environment to your garages. Too bad.
So we'll also raise this issue with Adam from his report point of view, and I'm sure he's got some clarification that he might better give about where he ends up. And if we go through the deliberation process, we'll certainly be considering it in one way, shape, or form. So I think you can expect a condition around it, But we're very, very mindful that to require a right of way over something that we can't control or make happen would only frustrate the consent. And we can't do that. So that's the important thing for us, is saying, well, you know, so the good thing is you're alert to the situation that we've got, and we'll find a way to, if we grant, to accommodate it.
I suppose the other part of it, I speak to whoever, the consent which enabled that lot of land for a legal access, now just right off to the four-C stage. So it's a bit of a, can the council now legitimately revisit that position?
Yeah, but I think if you look at that plan, it's a bit of a moot point as to whether access was actually shown as being as well. I think the plan actually showed it very well at all. Yeah, well, not the subdivision, more when the building was put in place and when the access was shown as being in place. And I suspect, rightly or wrongly, that access has been into there for some time perhaps, and it's just picked up and then taken saying, that's just the driveway, that's where it is. And no one's looked at this issue that's now live. Yeah, because that's not uncommon. Right, any other questions? Yep, might be helpful, thought you might.
Firstly, the irrigation. There's an irrigation rate there, is it proposed to put easements in place? Because the easements will shift about different, in terms of making sure that both lots can continue doing.
There is no easement currently in irrigation case. Any easements which are supposed to drop down the consequent titles. So if there's no request for easement currently, the word context to every file, there is the alignment of the race, the game here is in the race. If you treat it as with, I don't think there's easements anywhere in there.
Yeah, it's just making sure that with the shift in the boundary, that access to that water supply remains in perpetuity in terms of there being appropriate easements in place to secure that. It's coming through one property to service another property where particularly so lot one, that shift there, the irrigation race kind of loops around, but it's now part of lot two. So I just want to clarify that that remains, I'm assuming it's a pro rata divisions of irrigation supply as well.
Yes.
Yeah, which is standard for Gallio. Yeah.
Yeah,
Whole section Darcy will be taking over that one. We have irrigation rights to take water out of the race for that need.
Okay.
That will just transfer directly onto Darcy. So we will get the western, we're keeping land between basically the race and Darcy's boundary. We can keep the irrigation rights for that.
So there are existing easements in place.
No, it's not an easement. Sorry, I mean, we've got rights along the whole way. No, official.
That's fine.
So, yeah, that's, so it'll just be transferred from all section that goes to that, students, and then all the rights to the irrigation, will just briefly transferred. We will keep our portion of that access. I mean, we say of that access to be portion of the race. That's remains in our property.
And you've got to keep access to the race itself
Oh, yeah.
as part of the, you've got irrigation scheme.
So that's easement for the irrigation society is covered, of course, just to continue as is.
Yeah.
Section of it.
One more question, just in relation to the access issue that we just discussed. Is it physically possible if it was not able to be resolved for an alternative to lot two, just given the lay of the land there? Is it physically possible to come straight off the road That's what I'm asking, I guess, rather than using that reserve area.
Not very easily.
No,
Also, that's a good central access point for the, for safety, for the contour of the, hill in the corner. So it's sort of right in the centre.
thank you.
Just on irrigation, I've made the assumption, when I look at this, is that the easements for the Galloway irrigation, I'll get the right word, society, whatever it is, I would have thought they would cover the situation.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, well, just because there's quite a few rights to convey water in the Galloway Irrigation Society on both the titles, so,
So there's also a right to convey water over lot 3 and over the current 3 and favourable to on the plan page 41 of the agenda.
Yeah.
So there's existing easements there that would just be carried down as needed.
and that would be and they would have all come out of the Irrigation Schemes Act of whatever, 19 something it was, whatever.
Yeah.
So that's the assumption, but I guess, I think what we would, if the panel was of a mind to grant a consent, then I think it would probably require confirmation that all those easements were in place and did provide for that's the easy way to cover up. Because if they're not, again, best be fixed now, otherwise it becomes someone else's problem and that's not helpful. I'm sure the applicants don't want to let that happen.
Patients, any serious and dual reserves.
Yeah, cool.
I guess that was my question.
Yeah.
Are easements necessary?
Yeah, the answer, I think, yes, and we'll just make sure that if we do grant that, it's been answered. Oh, I'm sorry, did I steal it off you?
That's fine.
Excellent. Right, that's all happy with those clarifications. I'll now ask our planning officer for his right of reply and any thoughts he has on what he's heard. We might have a couple of questions for him, but he'll probably circumvent them because he knows what they're going to be.
Yeah, I was just about to say, that I think it sounded like the main point of the panel was interested and concerned about is the access for lot 2. So as a very quick look, and from what I can see, and what I can see from getting to Mr. Bailey, asking about this for the hearing, is that lot is existing reserve under the reserve sex. I just pulled that out of the draft reserve one. So essentially what that means is if council is looking at granting an easement, I personally say the reserves process will take priority because that's a public process. That's also essentially a national public process. It's a national public process. In terms of that as well, Mr. Bailey's verbally indicated that he's not saying what the issue is standing while it is resolved. That's a stock confirmation that we get anything in writing from them. And the kind of keep the status quo there where that's essentially that use of that access is essentially at council pleasure. I also look at that in terms of if the panel wasn't inclined to say no for due access, I do to start looking at how the effects of the subdivision require it. The provision, the demand on access isn't really changing at all. The only issue is the fact that it's, as far as we can tell, not established in the correct place and hasn't been from what I could see, at least 19 years, and council not done anything about it yet.
And in fact, if someone hadn't brought it to their attention, they wouldn't know.
Quite likely.
I think 100% likely.
So you can kind of look at this and go, yes, that's a problem, but is it a problem that has to be dealt with in this work we've got
processes that council will also have to follow that we can't do under this process. And are probably going to be much more telling in terms of whether it's going to be accepted or social.
As part of this process, does the applicant have to give up that piece of their property that's currently got the council road on it?
Equally, no.
So the applicants could say, well, we'll give you your road if you give us the access.
Potentially, yes. That would be sort of a broader discussion than just the subdivision, because under the Reserves Act process, we still have to be considering wider public use. So we haven't been considered yet.
Well, I guess what I was getting at is going that it's just, if I look at it from a fairness point of view, it's a bit of a one-way street at the moment. The applicant's going to give up a piece of their land for nothing. That's got a road on it. That's been there for a long time as well.
Yeah.
But the quid pro quo for the applicant to get the access has been there for a long time equally is more complex. And this is not about, no one's doing this on purpose, it's just a process we're going to work by.
Yeah, but legally speaking, there'll be nothing stopping the applicant saying, I'm going to put a piece of over that road to council realign. But it's supposed to be, legally.
It would be problematic, but what I'm trying to raise is there's an inconsistency in the fact there's two different pieces of legislation that the applicants have to deal with here. Something that the panel would turn its mind to, I think, as part of the consent process, any consent that might be granted with in terms of conditions.
And from what I can see, having access directly off that road, directly off the road would be difficult.
Yeah.
But I don't see it being possible necessarily. So to my mind, if through the Reserves Act process, the council doesn't grant an easement, it doesn't create a situation where that site is no viable access. In my opinion.
So I guess at the moment, I mean, obviously, it's been alluded to, obviously there's obviously a cost in relation to the potential of looking at that as a possible easement over reserve land. I'm picking that hasn't been addressed at any stage. I haven't seen anything in the papers as to what that cost would be and the implications of the process.
In terms of the mainland recent easement reserves.
Yeah. Okay. I guess my concern is that beyond all of us sitting here, and it becomes somebody else's issue in the future if there's any other applications, and they're going to turn around and say, why did council not, which was the question raised earlier, why did council not do it when they had the opportunity to deal with it? So I think it does need to be dealt to in some shape or form. And I guess it's just where we land on that. Because then it secures for the applicants as well that this is going to make sure that they can then pass on title easy enough without any implications from council for whatever might happen to that land going forward in the future beyond us. So
The panel is interested, current fees and charges, the application fees into reserve land has a $250 application fee, $1,030 processing fee, any associated costs, just get costs, maybe any survey costs, and just whatever they get to cost. Okay.
Right. Anything else you want to add, Adam?
The option easements, I think everything else is just as per my, well, the only other thing involved was if the kennel gets to a point where they don't think any changes to any necessary, the condition, my recommended condition 3 probably doesn't need to be included. On the basis that there'd be no words required.
No.
That would Any questions?
Thanks, Adam. I have no other particular questions. I think we've looked up what I wanted to hear. Panel, Ian, Martin, Tracy, all done. All clear, Ian. Good. Mr. Clouston, the right of reply.
And it's highlighted, say, two opportunities to, that there's remove the excess or formalise the excess. That's the two things. Formalising the excess does come at a cost. But the counter to that is through this application, the council is legalising this road. Rick points out that should the landowners get a bit pedantic, they could actually fence halfway through the road now, which would result in a realignment be necessary. So there is a.
For the record, I wasn't encouraging that.
No, and we never suggested it.
No,
It came from me.
I'm not sure it's time.
no, I don't think it is either, but it just shows there's an issue.
Yes.
It's not that, and it's not that simple, I think, is the case.
So I'm sure that if there's an easement over a piece of reserved land, it's not unprecedented and is achievable. It's who initiates the process and who pays for the process. In light of the granting of a piece of land to be vested to council, I would ask that the council goes down that path. Maybe that would be the simpler option. Which points out that they're the best place on that road to maximise visibility in both directions. So technically you could require a new access, but then you reduce the road safety. So those are the considerations to incorporate into your decision making. So I think that's general. Aaron. And because of the contour of the existing driveways wrong.
Yeah, we were aware.
Is there
The site's
services,
quite familiar to some of us, might have even been there at some stage.
is there services through that driveway? Do we know?
No, nothing.
Okay, any follow-up questions? Thank you, Mr. Clisman. Yeah, clearly there'll be some things to work through if we are of a mind to grant consent. And I think we've indicated where they might be. And we're aware of that, and if we are going to grant, we'll find a way to address those particular issues and concerns as best we can. The decision of the hearings panel therefore is reserved. The formal decision will be in writing and will be available within a statutory period of 15 working days. In the event that the release of the decision is delayed, the applicant will be advised of the delay. The hearing is now adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate something simple to our minds too. It should be simple, shouldn't it? You know, I think there goes another agenda that actually that was simpler.
That's the rest of the day.
No, that's a previous hearing. Decision required. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Very much.